let's talk about something important. Kubernetes 1.28 introduced a native sidecar container support, right? And in this video, let's understand how do you differentiate init container and a sidecar container in Kubernetes, and what are the main differences, right? Let's try to understand the main difference between an init container and a sidecar container. So init containers are basically used for initializing tasks, right? You have your main application here and you have your init containers here, right? What they do is they kind of do the pre-launch stuff. Let's say you need to download something from the internet, or you have some dependencies that you need to download, or maybe some kind of database connectivity checks that you want to do, or you may want to tweak some configuration changes. These kind of activities are usually done by init containers, and the way they execute is they start with the first init container, runs it, finishes its job, and then go to the next one, runs it, finishes its job, and they quit, they exit, and they exit with a status 0, right? And this is the flow for starting these containers. So you start with init containers followed by your main container. Now let's talk about sidecar container. I don't have a diagram for sidecar containers, but the execution flow sequence remains the same. The main difference is the sidecar container is a container that supports the main container, which means if you have two sidecar containers here and one application container, so at the end of the day, the pod ends up running 3 pods all the time. And the use case is obviously quite different. You have logging. Let's say if your main container has some kind of logging, this can be shipped to one of the init containers, or it can have a proxy in place. Let's say if you want to have your application work with a proxy and then connect to the main container, that can also work. So these are some use cases how you work with your sidecar container, right? So let's try to understand what we're trying to do here. The important point is we're trying to understand how init container or a sidecar container behaves in a failure use case. This is important, right? I have one init container here. I also have a main container here. I'm just initializing stuff. And let's say after 5 seconds or 10 seconds, I'm exiting this init container. What happens is that my main container cannot start. It cannot serve any traffic, because my init container did not finish successfully, right? Now, when I'm trying to do the same with the sidecar container, and then let's say after 10 seconds, I stop the init container, and then there is always a chance for you to bring up the sidecar container up and running, and your main container can go up and running because of some settings that you have, right? And in worst case scenario, even if your sidecar container is not running, let's say after 10 seconds, even after a restart, your main container starts running. You can send the traffic to your main container, assuming you are not using your sidecar container as a proxy, right? We'll have a demo. So we'll use this use case to have a demo. Now before that, let me show you what we are going to do. So we are going to launch a pod with one init container, and then we'll also have one main container here. As I said, if you have your init container configuration without restart policy, that is treated as your traditional init container. And if you have your restart policy set to always, now this becomes a sidecar container. This is the basic difference between how you run a sidecar container inside Kubernetes natively. Let's go to this setup because I'm using my friend's labs here. It's called Eximius, labs.eximius.com, and I have different terminals opened up. Right, just give me a minute. Okay, it's basically applying test.yaml configuration, which I just showed, and then it's basically launching a pod with 2 containers. One is init container, the second one is the main container, and my second script is basically displaying all the pods that I have, and my third has showing up all the events. My fourth is basically deleting this part, and that's all. I think I should also have one more which I have not listed, which is test connection. I need to have that's fine, test connection. Sorry guys, I really don't want to waste your time, so I should have done this before. Right, and kubectr 28 namespace test. It's not created, so we are set. So let's launch a pod, and then let's visualize what's happening. See, we are trying to start this init container, and then it's not getting started, right? The reason being is very straightforward, right? We don't have, it's not starting because we are exiting this container with exit status 1, which means it's not finishing its job. If it is not finished, kubelet will not allow you to start this main container. This is the main problem when you have your init container, and if your init container fails, you don't have a way to start your main container, right? And how do you test it? I can run my event script and see what's happening. See, it's getting turned off. My sidecar container 1 is getting terminated, and then it's getting into a back off loop, and then it will restart. The main point is I cannot connect to my main pod. Right? This is my biggest issue. See, I cannot connect to my real container 1. So what I'm trying to do is, let's clean up this stuff, and let me clean the pod. Right, this is terminating, and I'm going to change few settings here. I'm going to change this to a sidecar container, which means I'm going to have a restart policy as always, which makes this a sidecar container, and I'm keeping everything as is. Let's try this. So I don't have anything up and running. So we are starting a pod with sidecar container and the main container is getting started, and I am looking at my events, and if I can test this, it's basically connecting to my main container. Right, see, if one of the pod is running for me, so the status is running. The moment the status is running, you can have the connectivity. You can always have the connectivity. Right? Okay, let's write a for loop. Okay, it's too fast. So let me honestly. Right, so it's connecting every 1 second. It tries to connect to the pod and then get the name of the pod. Right, now as you can see, my sidecar container is not up and running. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's not up. It drops in few seconds. It goes to 1.1/2, right? But with the connectivity for me remains same. I'm just trying to connect to my main container, which is the example pod, and it keeps working. So this is the main difference that I noticed from a sidecar container and an init container. That's it for today. If you find this useful, please consider subscribing to the channel. Have a wonderful day ahead. See you next time.